So for the panel discussion, we were supposed to have Andrew Campolo, who is the head of IT security at Zanaco, as well as Francis Mianda Milambo from Zanaco joining us on the discussion, but unfortunately, they're both unable to make it. So we have the privilege of having Mr. Aaron Simumba, who's the head of data science at EFC, and Mr. Francis Mumbi, head of data office at Stanbic Bank, to join us in this in the panel discussion that we'll now be moving into. So as earlier mentioned, the discussion that we're actually having is the state of artificial intelligence in Zambia. So what opportunities are there? What have been the implications so far? So allow me to welcome Mr. Aaron Simumba from EFC, and he'll get to share with us as we start his journey so far, what he's done, and something that he finds most interesting about his digital career. And then from there, we'll also introduce Mr. Francis Mumbi, head of data office at Stanbic Bank. He's actually spoken at a number of events, and including African level as well, where he's addressed artificial intelligence and various innovative opportunities for Africa in general and Zambia as well in specific. So, Mr. Aaron Simumba, over to you.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much, Joseph. Good morning, everyone joining us from across Africa and probably across the world. Morning, evening, for those in the different time zone. Yes. So yeah. Just a brief, as mentioned, I'm Aaron Simumba. So I lead business intelligence and analytics at Entrepreneurs Financial Center. Yeah, so basically Entrepreneurs Financial Center, it's a microfinance institution. So we cut off for SMEs, both on the, so we cut off for SMEs as well as both on the license deposit taking microfinance. Yeah, overview of how I got into this space and what sort of my interest. Then from there we transition, I think, into the discussion once we get Francis' introductions. Yes, yeah. So basically, I think I'm more of I found myself in this space of data science more accidentally, because initially, professionally, I'm trained as an accountant. So I trained as an accountant from university, from my undergraduate, then sort of slowly became a self-taught person in the data space. So that's how I started to transition bit by bit. So I've been in this space now, I think for the last 5 years. I've been I've crafted my expertise now in the space. So I think what I would consider to be most interesting, I think, is the ever opportunity for learning. I think there's never enough. You do not know enough. Every single day you're presented with a different challenge. I think it's that aspect of the non-routine demands of the work that I think is most exciting, because at the end of the day, I think as one person who was taught as an accountant, there's some aspects of it that really became quite routine. And so I think the interest to move to a career where I could probably wake up every morning not knowing what basically I need to do, I think that is one exciting aspect. So I think I'll stop here for now, and then we'll pick up the discussion once we get the introduction from the other colleague. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Aaron. That's been interesting. So, of course, sometimes you, of course, want to be very deliberate about our journey, but we need to as well let opportunities as well guide in how we don't, of course, have to be so rigid. So we need to let opportunities guide in how, what direction, what course our careers could take. So thanks for sharing about that and how your flexibility have led you to today and getting why you actually then get to share with us experiences of what you've achieved so far and how you look at the industry so far. So without taking much time, allow me to give the floor to Mr. Francis Mumbi, who is head of data at Stanbic Bank. Mr. Francis.
Thank you very much, Joseph, and thank you very much to the organizing team for this event. My name is Francis Mumbi. I currently work at the intersection of finance, technology, and design. I'm currently working as head of the Enterprise Data Office at Stanbic Bank, Zambia. A bit about my journey, similar to Aaron's journey. I started off from the accounting field, trained as an accountant. Then I joined the investment management industry, where I worked as an investment analyst. When I joined commercial banking, I've worked in areas such as credit risk management, MIS and data, as well as innovation management and product design. Currently, as head of data or the Enterprise Data Office, I'm also the AI and robotics lead for Stanbic Bank Zambia. Within that AI and robotics lead, we're looking at ways where we can look at applied AI and robotics in financial services. So in addition to my credentials, I can add the position of AI researcher and robotics researcher. So that's a short about me. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Francis, for that. Well, before we actually move into the actual panel discussion, allow me to just play a short clip of a recent interview that you had. It's from 2018 at AFCOM, so that maybe we can all tap into the inspiration. Yeah, so just allow me to beam my screen. Okay, I hope you can all see my screen.
Welcome back to AfricaCom 2018, where we are shaping the digital future of the African continent. With me now is Francis Mumbi, the innovation lead.
Sorry, just kindly confirm if you're able to see the video that I'm sharing.
Are we able to see?
Yeah, yes, you can go ahead.
All right, okay.
Big thank
you.
Lovely to have you here. You're participating in the stream that discusses artificial intelligence, AI, as we generally know it. Why is it important for the continent to start having this conversation now?
I think it's critical to have the conversation of AI now at this stage, because similar to the mobile revolution, AI is what's going to take the digital transformation of the continent to the next level. We're seeing at the global level applications of AI in medicine, in education, in natural and physical sciences, but most importantly in financial services, in driving financial inclusion and economic development of the continent.
So therefore, what impact are we going to realize, and more importantly, what potential sits with AI in Africa?
The potential which AI sits within Africa is, of course, delivering better products and services to the customers across a broad spectrum of demographics, delivering access to financial products and services. For instance, if you look at in the area of credit, if you're going to build scale, you need powerful AI applications for you to be able to determine and apply credit scoring to individuals who have never had credit or access to loans before. If you're going to extend insurance, for instance, you need powerful applications to assess risk and determine who would deserve insurance in agriculture, in trade, and other sectors which are driving the continent forward.
And I imagine this will have an impact on the workforce, meaning that your employees, for example, at Stanbic, need to be responsive to demands of AI.
Definitely. What we see is that there will be a dislocation in terms of the workforce. There will be a rearrangement of the structures of the workforce within organizations. Because AI brings with it a great deal of automation. So processes which were performed by human hands will have to be delegated to machines or computers. So as leaders within the industry, we'll have to see how best are we preparing our workforce for that future by investing in training skills, investing in education programs to develop the talent pool, which is going to work alongside AI colleagues to deliver value to the customers and the market.
Obviously, if you are ahead of the game, you gain competitive advantage.
Definitely, definitely. Exactly. For an industry which is about to take early investors will definitely lead the market in terms of defining how best to employ these technologies in their businesses. Early access to markets, which turn out to be profitable segments within the sectors, and begin to dominate those areas of the industry.
Well, Francis, I certainly hope that AfricaCom 2018 will provide a lot of inspiration for you and your team. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. That's an interesting journey. So coming to a discussion, the state of AI in Zambia. What is AI? Maybe we can begin with Francis, and then we can also get Aaron's view of what AI is and how has it actually been applied in Zambia.
No, thank you very much. I think like any new phenomena, any new technology, which has got far-reaching consequences, AI means different things to different people. But in my work and our perspective around AI as a field, we're looking at systems and computer programs which simulate cognitive capabilities. In this case, we're looking at systems and computer programs which simulate intelligence which you find in biological systems. For example, things like understanding perception of light in the form of vision, or understanding of sound in the form of speech, understanding speech, detecting speech, and understanding of natural language. So that's how we look at AI as a field. But of course, there's also the aspect of machine learning. When I look at machine learning, this is, of course, the use of statistical techniques to infer possible outcomes or make predictions and inferences about phenomena. So there are these fields which are interlinked, but sometimes are used interchangeably. But if you look at AI purely, we're looking at computer systems and programs which simulate human intelligence in this regard, or intelligence found in biological areas. But it's very closely linked to the field of machine learning, which is, of course, the use of statistical techniques to understand the environment and information. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Francis. And moving on to Aaron. Aaron, what is your view of AI? How would you define AI from your angle?
Thanks very much, Joseph. Yes, yeah. So I think just starting from, I think what Francis has actually highlighted is very important, because I think we are living right now in an era where there's a lot of buzz around AI. There's a lot of buzz. There's a lot of sort of movie kind of portrayal of AI. But I think at this particular moment, some of those things are an exaggeration of what AI truly is. From the business perspective, I think we've already seen it right in play. I think from the financial services, we've seen a whole lot of institutions moving to using, say, virtual assistants to help out in the banking sector. We've seen insurance companies actually employ a lot of machine learning to deliver certain services and to deliver certain value proposition to their clients. So I think from my end, I think that right now is the realistic view of what we should look at when, as far as we talk about AI. let's not, I think, get so bundled up into this aspect of thinking of AI sort of like this whole godly kind of intelligence. I think right now we are not yet there, but I think it presents a very big opportunity in terms of the one from the business perspective about delivering value at scale, being able to automate a lot of tedious tasks that could take human beings a lot of time. I think our lives have actually become even far much better. I think every individual that has got a smartphone right now has seen AI in play almost on a daily basis. I think we've seen automated recommendation for news. We are consuming content at a very rapid scale. We're able to find our way out by using our virtual assistants to help us get a lot of stuff done. I think that is right now more realistic way of looking at it, and I think it looks very promising even for the future in terms of the business applications of AI, as well as the whole aspect supported by machine learning. I think it's becoming. I think it's something that is worth embracing, and it's something worth looking forward to. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Aaron. And usually, of course, we get to learn about what something is, and maybe we fail to get to learn what it isn't, because we'd sort of bracket everything that sort of looks of that sort to be actually of whatever we're looking at. So maybe from an angle of misconceptions that people have had, and just trying to demystify certain things that people believe would be AI or what its capabilities are, and as well as also making that distinction between machine learning and AI. Aaron, could you maybe help us demystify what AI is and the differences between AI and machine learning, and how why the two have sort of in certain instances being used interchangeably?
Okay. All right, thanks very much. Yes, yeah. So I think the aspect is if you speak of machine learning, I think you talk of much of what machine learning is simply statistical methodologies, because much of what machine learning right now is simply statistical methodologies. It's to try to use the usage of data and statistical models and try to craft an end goal based on statistical principles. So you talk of right now, I think if there are models, especially from the business perspective, that are being used quite widely, what we know known as classification models. So, or in terms of classification models, there are a lot of predictive models right now, especially in the financial services. We've seen this in the oil industry, where models are used to predict price predictions, as well as volume prediction, demand forecasting, and all this. I think we've seen that these are some of the areas that where machine learning is widely used. From the speaking of sort of the AI, I'll take you back to what Francis had mentioned, because I think from the perspective of where we are right now, is that AI is sort of, we're trying to mirror sort of human-like intelligence. So sort of things that naturally, as a human being, you would sort of be expected to do, given certain information. And that's the reason why now it comes in another dimension, where we've seen the proliferation of big data right now, because the more data you have, the more you can infer logical organism in sort of like a human kind of setup. Because if, let's say, for instance, you are an institution like Google, where probably they've got most of the data about what your day looks like, what you do in the morning, you wake up, what you shop, what you search for, the content you consume, and all that. So you end up having information that you can correlate and sort of build a sort of a trail around what someone would expected to do and all that. And use, based on that information, try to produce that information in a human-like setup. So I think in sort of a nutshell, I think that's sort of the distinction. But at the end of the day, at the core of AI is a lot of machine learning that is powered by a lot of statistical principles. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Aaron. So as we're coming up with thematic areas for the Indaba, as well as trying to get the views of the panelists, I mean the participants that we have on the call, we took a survey of what people would expect, and we saw a number of people raising concerns about career development, and providing a platform for them to actually grow their skills. But before we come to answer this question, maybe Francis, could you maybe give us a journey of your experience of over 10 years in the technological industry? How has the industry evolved in overall digitization, and what have been some of the key milestones that are worth celebrating in how the Zambian technological industry has evolved in the last over 10 years that you've been in the industry?
Yeah, I think for me, the first wave will be the advent of the internet. If you look at the Zambian context, and I have to admit that I was too young to really fully appreciate and engage with the internet, but engaging with people who have been in that space, they talk of times when they were setting up companies and laying out cables to connect the businesses around this new phenomenon. And I know at the University of Zambia, there was a lab near the library where they were exploring applications of the internet. I think it's one of the spaces where you can actually really access the internet. The second wave has been around the advent of mobile. And I think that's the one which I had the opportunity to experience. I think mobile has been huge in terms of just transforming the way we connect, the way business is conducted across the board, and has allowed us to reimagine different industries. I think the emergence of mobile money has been the reimagining of the messaging systems. Instead of just transferring data packets, can you use those data packets as a representation of value which is being exchanged between people? So that's the background for the development of mobile money. But the extension of that is that you can only do so much within particular ecosystems, and we're now in the wave of intelligence, where I think every business, to sound innovative and competitive, they're slotting in the two words AI somewhere in their marketing pitch. Where they are really employing AI or not is highly questionable. So in the age of intelligence, where systems and platforms are supposed to have, and I'm using the word deliberately, supposed to have embedded intelligence, where as a business, you are supposed to predict or understand your customers more deeply and be able to anticipate their next move. As a customer, there's a natural expectation that the business that is supporting you also understands you and can anticipate your next move. So we're in that wave of intelligence. In terms of maturity, there's not much research around the maturity levels of AI in business in this new wave. So it leaves to be understood and further unpacked. But what I can say is that in this new wave of embedded intelligence, there are pockets of excellence across multiple fields, which are worth further exploring and really building upon for the next phase.
Interesting. Wow. So we were supposed to have at least Andrew maybe talking about the regulatory framework, but maybe just yourself, Francis, or even Aaron, would you maybe just share some highlights in terms of any roadmap that the country has had so far in governing how we actually develop digitally, as well as supporting any further advancements in even more modern tools like, of course, artificial intelligence and machine learning and other upcoming innovations within the technological world. How has been input from an angle of governance been in terms of guiding our or giving us a roadmap in how we could develop?
Yeah. Maybe I can just pick off before Aaron joins in. So naturally, what you see is that governance and regulatory usually follow innovation. So you guys, the innovators, who are on the bleeding edge of this new thinking, will go ahead, and then the governance will follow. So what we've seen recently, I think through ZICTA, there's the enactment of the ICT bill. I think it was last year or 2 years back. But most recently, which is relevant to this discussion, I think is the Protection of Information Act and also the Cyber Security Act. So these two acts will really shape how we innovate and build products within this field of deep learning, machine learning, and AI. Because what they do is they put in guidelines in terms of what is the proper use of personal data, and that may influence, I don't want to say restrict, but influence how products are designed, marketed, and distributed. I think it's a step in the right direction. If you look at the spirit of the act, there should be a balance. I think we've seen at a global scale where the use of these tools have been exploited to negative consequences. And there are these externalities which sometimes us innovators forget about when we're handed over with a new piece of technology which has got wide-reaching implications. For every general purpose technology, there's always a positive and negative. And we just need to be sure that the positive that we create do not create unintended consequences in the negative sense, which has got wide societal implications. Yeah.
True. Thank you very much. Aaron, over to you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I think just to add up on that aspect, I think I'll push my angle towards what is happening in the space of digital financial services. Yes, I think we've seen, I think should be two regulators right now sort of taking sort of welcoming stance towards making sure that there's innovation in that space. I think one is the Securities and Exchange Commission. I think should be early this year, where they've launched a sandbox for fintechs. Yeah, so they are welcoming innovation in the space of financial services providers, fintech companies that are leveraging on technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence to sort of bring forward their ideas and be groomed in a controlled environment. So I think that is a very important step, because at the end of the day, if the regulator is that welcoming, then it helps out now with innovations to try and map out how they proceed going forward. I think the other aspect is the deliberate effort, I think, by Bank of Zambia. I think that they've indicated this in their 2020-2023 strategic plan, that they're welcoming the idea also to create a sandbox to try to promote and encourage innovation in the financial services aspect. So I think that's a very progressive way, because I think financial services, especially coming in from the fintech aspect, I think we've seen how much sort of change and how much impact this has brought across Africa. I think we all read about success stories of M-Pesa in Kenya. We all read, I think we are all witnesses to how a company like Zona and how we've seen the growth of that sector. So I think going forward, we'll probably, I think, see more of this coming through, both from the big players and the small players. And I think for the big players, it's easier because the bargaining power is, they've got the bargaining power. So if you see the regulator invite unregulated small institutions to come on board and be groomed to an incubator kind of setup. I think it's very encouraging. So I think that's one aspect we need to look at. The other aspect I think we need to make sure that that is in place is on the regulation side of information, because I think there's a lot of information that we give out both knowingly and unknowingly. And I think we need a very strong regulatory framework in place to ensure that personal data is not misused, data that we give out in confidence, or data that we give out believing that it will be used for the greater good is protected and is used for the intended purpose, or to deliver value that the end user deserves. So I think those are some of the aspects that we need to think about, and to ensure that even as we embrace technology, we bear that in mind, that look, at the end of the day, technology gives us so much power, but I think with greater power also comes now a greater call for responsibility and a greater responsibility, and also greater care for what we what you get to be entrusted with. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. And it's great to actually note how, of course, you've highlighted the steps that have been taken from an angle of governance in governing how far we can go. But of course, it also anchors on the importance of our personal ethics as well, because of course, as Francis mentioned, laws and regulations always catch up to what innovation is doing. It's usually innovation that's usually a step ahead, but in cases where we sort of breach certain certain things that would actually be ethically wrong, then the law still gets to catch up with people, as we've seen in other developed nations. So our personal ethics as well, of course, play an important role, just as you have also highlighted. So maybe so in terms of, so even before we move on to just the next question, so from an angle of just looking at frameworks that other countries within Southern Africa have applied in informing, in guiding their governance, could you maybe cite at least one or two that you feel might be worth emulating, even as we keep refining our governance and roadmap as Zambia? Maybe we can start with you, Aaron.
Oh, all right, thank you. Thanks. Yes, I think from the regional perspective, I think one country that stands out most, I think it's South Africa. I think they've taken a very deliberate position in terms of how they're crafting their governance framework, and how they plan to leverage on these new technologies. I think South Africa, I think should have been, is it a year or so, when the president, I think, took a very deliberate effort by formulating what they came to know as the Fourth Industrial Revolution Committee. And I think they were tasked to look at several aspects of the economy and try to craft how technologies such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and the 5G internet and all that would affect the country as a whole. And I think Progressive, I think they've done quite significant work. I've not fully read the report, but I think I remember coming across the report that was published, and it looks like it's a very extensive report in terms of that, because it covers, I think, almost all aspects of the economy. So both service delivery from the government aspect, digitizing the government processes, aspects of to do with medical, aspects to do with manufacturing, aspects to do with environmental or impact which some of these technology would have, and how the country is preparing itself and arming itself in terms of how can it respond and leverage on these technologies for the betterment of its development. Yeah, I think in other countries also, I think the conversation has started, because I think we've seen these technologies, it's got far-reaching implications. So I think the conversations are there, but I think South Africa stands out as one which has taken really a very deliberate effort to try to see how they can leverage and take the opportunities that are presented by these emerging technologies. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Maybe, for instance, would you have anything to add on in terms of how policymakers in neighboring countries within even just the southern sub-Saharan region have effectively implemented a roadmap for their innovation? Are there any experiences or specific aspects that you can share with us?
Yes, I think they're good examples. I think South Africa is one of them. I think they've been sort of forward-thinking in terms of how they apply 4Gs, AI, and blockchain within various industries. Another market which has been progressive that has been Kenya. I saw a policy statement from the Central Bank of Kenya, which was giving guidelines on how they are looking at blockchain, and they even formed a working group to really study how blockchain can be employed in the financial services industry. So in that regard, I see those two markets as being progressive in that regard. I also know that in Kenya there's a very deep AI ecosystem which has evolved. And I think what regulators can do is really connect into these ecosystems through universities, through innovation hubs, talking to people in the industry who are integrating these technologies in their products. For instance, as a bank, we're employing machine learning and AI more deeply in our products. So those could be indicators where regulators can now begin to engage the industry more widely and see how best they can support and accelerate that journey, as well as provide the necessary guardrails to protect the wider community. I think locally, the direction which Aaron alluded to is a very positive move, which we should really take advantage of, is the creation of these regulatory sandboxes. The Bank of Zambia has one in place. Securities and Exchange Commission has got one in place. So those are the ways in which regulators and policymakers can really drive these themes and this messaging forward. Engaging the community, creating regulatory sandboxes where experiments can be run, and then building the right policies and guidelines to protect the wider community. Yeah.
Thank you. So talking about blockchain, so we had the question in the chat from Kalaluka, who asked about measures that are being taken to educate masses on blockchain technologies within Zambia. Would you be happy to maybe shed more light on that?
Yeah, I think the measures that have been taken, I wouldn't say they are sufficient. And the challenge is that the messaging around blockchain has been overtaken by the messaging around cryptocurrencies. So cryptocurrencies seem to be capturing people's imagination rather than the blockchain technology itself. So I think the Bank of Zambia has done measures to really educate the masses on their position on cryptocurrencies. And I think the direction is clear in that regard. But around education, around the blockchain technology itself, I don't think there's been much education around it. What's interesting is that the government is running a very good program around use of blockchain technology within Zambia now. It's currently covered under the lands registry. So the current project, which is looking to digitize the land registry, is currently built on blockchain. So I strongly believe more could be done in that regard by citing such examples and seeing how blockchain can really help move the country forward and the economy forward. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, you can actually go on.
Yes, I was just saying that there's more education on crypto and how the position of the Bank of Zambia on crypto, but very little education on blockchain. So I think that's the gap that we currently have.
All right, thank you very much. And I think even earlier on you mentioned to say, of course, we're not yet maybe fully there as a nation, but we've made strides to get in there. You talked about how digital innovations such as mobile money have actually been a vehicle for unlocking much of and the undigitized areas within our industries in Zambia. Maybe could you just help from an angle of capacity building, just maybe share more insight in terms of how we could further use the digital innovation to actually bring about further enhancements from an angle of AI for Zambia, as well as just other technological advancements.
No, thank you very much. I think even the new excitement around AI and advanced applied machine learning techniques were mainly informed and influenced by the advent of the internet. Because what the internet brought was a huge data sets available to researchers within this field, and data sets which it can were fairly clean. You can have tags, can be tagged and labeled for use in machine learning and AI applications. And I think the same is true for the mobile revolution. Because if you look at the mobile industry now, mobile industry telephony as a whole, there's so much information which the mobile network operators generate. They've got information around location. So every time you're making a call, your call is routed through a particular tower, which is geo-marked or geo-fenced. They've got information around the devices being used for that call. They've got information around the duration. To some extent, they've also got information around the conversation itself. So from leveraging these platforms as well, it's a question of reimagining what use cases can you build on top of these platforms or technologies which are in play, and then what problems do you want to address? So, for instance, in the area of capacity building, and I want to tilt it towards training. There's a company, I think, in Zambia, which is delivering financial literacy training on feature phones. So what they do is they've got a target community where you can get a call, and then a message is pledged to you on that call to educate you on financial literacy. So those are areas where you can begin to imagine solutions to some of the problems that we currently face as a country and a society. Being an agri-based economy, again, you can use these platforms for price discovery of your commodities, for delivering education on how best to plan your cropping and your field. Or you can send information on rain patterns, but not only send information, but also gather information on rain patterns. Use these mobile devices as IoT devices to gather information. So it's a question of just extending our imagination beyond the traditional ways of looking at these problems. Yeah. I'm not sure whether I was online.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Joseph. Yes.
Could be Joseph facing it.
Hello, Joseph. Are you with us? Okay. Looks like we're having a challenge from his end. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Financial inclusion, Aaron, maybe could you be just more light in terms of how nation from that angle using? So my question was from an developed, how have we progressed as a country through the use of digital innovation, and how are we faring in terms of trying to meet our World Bank objective in terms of being financially inclusive?
All right, thank you, Joseph. Yeah, I think most of the times when people speak about financial inclusion, I think one thing that comes in is the banking aspect of it. I think, for instance, I think a lot of fintechs right now, they are catering for a lot of people that were traditional and banked. I think mobile money is one such example where we've seen a lot of unbanked people right now come into the banking ecosystem through the usage of mobile money, which has right now, I think, been quite a very progressive move. I think we've seen, I think the numbers are quite staggering. If you look at the numbers published by Bank of Zambia, they're worldwide in their millions. So that tells you of just the acceptance. And in terms of even generally, I think we've seen in most merchants right now moving into accepting this payment as payment means. So mobile money as a payment means, which is very progressive, I think, because it brings in most people that naturally wouldn't be in this space. So that's one aspect of it. But I think there are other aspects that we can extend certain services to. For instance, insurance. I think it's high time. I think we brought insurance to the masses. I think right now, traditionally, it's sort of still sort of a formalized arrangement. But I think there are certain products that come in the package in the form of, let's say, for instance, the way what mobile money has done from the banking side. I think that's one aspect that that is needed. Other aspects also we need to bring in financial include those that were excluded. I think in other also service provision. So be it, I think the government itself has to also take initiative to ensure that certain services that right now are not easily accessible, but they are essential to the citizen at large. I think that sort of inclusion start bringing such services to the people by leveraging some of these technologies. I think which right now with most people on mobile, I think the delivery means have become far much easier compared to say 10, 15 years ago. So I think that would be some of the aspects that would need to be catered for.
All right, thank you very much, Aaron. So far we've had both you and Francis talk about finance, insurance, agriculture as key areas. From a short-term perspective, and also in terms of what could be most practical, how could we best harness the various innovations into making Zambia fully, I mean, most Zambian innovations and as well as solutions being almost fully AI driven. So is there one field out of these that could reach a fully AI driven objective much faster than the other, or is there an area that we could focus more on in terms of trying to innovate and maximize the possibility of reaching an AI driven Zambia?
All right. Okay. Thanks. I'll just quickly take this one, then Francis can jump in. I think one aspect I think to accelerate this journey is capacity building, and capacity building that is both having the right and well-trained human resource, infrastructure, opportunities, deliberate regulatory frameworks that addresses these aspects. That's one aspect, because I think if you look at the technology right now, is that 20, 30 years ago, some of the technology that we take for granted right now were unaffordable, or in terms of cost and in terms of accessibility. But I think right now we've seen the big tech companies try to bring some of these technologies that were very expensive to be relatively cheaper and well accessible. So I think the aspect of accessibility, I think, is being catered for on the global scale. But now we need to say, how are we building local capacity? And local capacity would mean to having individuals that are trained and specialized in this. Because trust me, right now is that I can rent a very powerful computer to build a system, to build a sort of a work process right now for very little, you see. But I would need to have the right skills, the right exposure, and the right supporting ecosystem. So I think that's what one aspect we really need to take care of. Capacity should be number one. Let's build the right capacity, because trust me, the technologies now are there and are accessible and quite relatively cheaper. So that's actually my take in terms of us accelerating and starting this journey and seeing how and see it through the point that now we should be able to boast around having like to boast that we are moving in tandem with the world.
All right, thank you. Over to you, Francis.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I think you cannot underrate the impact of human capital or human or skills capabilities. But to look at which industries are sort of well posed to take advantage of this, I really look at the data-driven industries within the market. I see telecom as one area which is rich to really employ AI in their products and embed that intelligence in. Financial services is another area. Excuse me. Government is also another area where we can really employ AI and machine learning to enhance the delivery of services. So looking at these data-rich industries, that's where I see the opportunity is, where you can really achieve that delta or multiply effect much more effectively. Financial services already, and these tech-led industries, they're already employing AI to a larger extent, particularly in the areas such as cybersecurity. So when you're running multiple systems, complex systems, most of the cybersecurity is algorithmic in terms of implementation. So you implement software which detects and manages your cyber threats. And these are the areas where we begin to see AI and products being extended out to the consumer sides of the business. So government, telcos, and financial services are, I think, are areas which are sort of in the front end around embedding and integrating AI in their service delivery. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Francis. So my final question would be just to get an understanding of how opportunities for growth from a skills development for people that might want to participate or maybe harness more skills if they've gotten a start at learning these skills. But then before I ask my question, I'll just open up the floor to everyone in the audience. So we'll just take questions for those that will just like raise their hands. Then the fellow panelists will then just help me like hand pick or just to unmute them and get to hear the questions. So we already had the question in the chat from Owen Sioto. Maybe we'll just allow him to speak and just ask his question.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Owen.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yes. My question is that we all know that there's this information which you could get from telecommunication, from financial sector, from everywhere. But how does this grouping or ourselves, do we have plans of maybe harnessing this information so that it can be available and we could use it to build our models, to train our models? Like what such plans do we have? That's a question I had, or I have right now.
Yeah, maybe I can address that in part. So what we've seen is that, of course, most of this information, particularly in the telco space and the financial services space, you have to appreciate is personally identifiable information, and I think over time there's been no regulation to publicly share this information. So if you want to access any information, it has to, the starting point, it has to be a bilateral agreement with a particular player in the target industry that you want to partner with. The good thing is that telcos have begun to create APIs which allow developers to connect to their ecosystems. So that's a move in the right direction. Regulatory bodies such as ZICTA also may host some of this information. Of course, and you can access it subject to passing certain guidelines around the owner of the information, allowing you to access that information. In addition to that, there are globally and regionally available data sources of anonymized data around the telco industry, which you can access. What we can do, we can share links to that data so that if you're researching a particular area, you can access that data and build your models on top. If you can't get that data, of course, there are platforms like Zindi and Kego, which have got specific data sets which are publicly available for you to conduct your research on. Of course, if you have to build a production system, then you have to make an adjustment for that. That's what I can say.
All right, thank you very much, Francis. So we have a question from Hansen. I don't know if you'd care to speak, or maybe you'd like me to read it out, Hansen.
Hey, Joseph, I think probably the ones that have already been posted, probably can read them out. So that
all right, okay. So Hansen was asking how AI is improving medical diagnosis.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Okay, so I'll take an attempt at this. I think from the medical field, I think at a global scale, I think we've seen a lot of innovation. I think we've seen a lot of innovation, and we've seen a lot of milestones being achieved. I'll give you a case in point. I think Google in particular, they've been well involved in this space. I think they've received quite very good results in their models to do with diabetic retinopathy. I think they've done quite a lot of work in that space, and I think their results right now are very good. We've seen they've done a lot of work in on the radiology side. I think they've done they've published quite a lot and open sourced quite some of the models, as well as they're building a lot of APIs for institutions to plug in and be able to run their own train their own data on that. So I think things are looking bright in that space, because I think we've seen I think their results right now compared to human doctors have been quite impressive, because I think they've been able to even diagnose some of the cancer patients at a stage where the human doctor could not actually pick out that the person has got underlying with a form of cancer from their diagnosis. So I think we're looking bright. I think I think that's another space that would be quite huge, other than a lot of advances we've already seen in industries like financial services, insurance, agriculture and all that. So I think that's a positive way.
All right. Thank you very much, Aaron. So I think we don't have many questions coming through the chat. So maybe we'll then just move on to a question that was covering most of what people had highlighted in the on our Facebook page. So their question was around community participation. So how can we leverage existing gaps in career development at both personal and community level? So others have the skills, others are wanting to learn the skills, but they would also want to have a platform to groom their skills even after acquiring them.
Okay. You can go ahead, Francis.
Yeah, I think for me, it's create visibility of this ecosystem. I think looking at the interactions on Facebook and other social media platforms, I think there's lots of interest from across the community. I think once you create that visibility, we begin to attract the like-minded minded people. But the other area is really to partner with institutions who are really thinking along lines of applied AI and machine learning within their business areas. That kind of also amplifies the community's voice. And of course, leverage platforms such as Zindi and Kego, because these at least have challenges which are presented on a regular basis. You can participate and hone your skills. I know some of the challenges which are presented on this platform also come with a monetary reward. So there's also a positive incentive. If your model is amongst maybe the top 2, top 3, you get to walk away with $1,000. That's 20,000 kwacha in Zambian terms. So these are areas that we can explore. But I also noticed that to also build that strong pipeline, there are gaps in terms of really access to basics. Access to a computer can be a challenge for some people. Access to internet connectivity can be a challenge to some people. And I think there we can leverage institutions like the University of Zambia or other public institutions to create platforms where people can access these services.
Yes, I think I agree with Francis totally. I think the platform is just highlighted. I think they are quite very helpful. But I think the other aspect you need also is deliberate effort from the different institutions. If you look at like sort of most of the some of the problems that are posted on Zindi are based on company data. So an institution would come up, say, okay, we have this data and would like to sort of crowdsource a solution to this problem, and they host it on Zindi, and different participants try to formulate a solution, and based on that, get some insight what sort of solution they would end up with. They were to use their data. So I think that's something that we also need to start. I think we've seen a lot of this movement, even at a global scale, of a lot of big institutions making their data, part of their data public, to make sure that they accelerate development in terms of the models. Another aspect would be also the building of a very strong community. I think 3 countries in particular have got very strong data science communities. I think one of them is in Nigeria. I think Nigeria, they've got the data science in Nigeria, which is very big. In Kenya, I think there are a lot of data science communities. South Africa is another country. So I think part of really creating the hype and demonstrating the importance of this field would be to ensure that to build a community that is of like-minded people with the same sort of focus, and try to bring in a lot of newcomers. Because trust me, right now, data science can be quite a lonely field if you're riding it alone. So I think we need a lot of support around both mentoring, because that's another aspect, because the process of you honing your skills to the point that you become commercially viable as a person, it's quite a tall order. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of patience, takes a lot of practice. Yeah, it takes a lot of mentoring from people that have seen some of these problems come up in industry, provided the solutions, and have seen that whole process, because it's data science. It's just more than a science. It's a craft. So the aspect of the craft comes in by experiential learning, by having to be in the thick of things. So I think it's not just good enough to do for you to do a course from university or do a mock course online. It's not enough, because at the end of the day is that what you experience in the actual say institutional setup is totally different. You realize that there's no one better solution to a problem. You have to probably iterate several times to find a reasonable accepted solution, or certain assumptions you have to take because a certain problem has challenged you a different way. It's something that, trust me, any person who has taken any of these courses, be it university or what, is totally different. What you get there is simply the inspiration, the idea that you can build a solution in this setup. But getting into the actual enterprise setup and having to provide such a solution, you realize that there are a lot of stakeholder aspects you have to take care of, which you probably you would not learn at school. There are a lot of aspects to, that you need to take into account. So that's one aspect, and I think that also will come with the deliberate effort from different institutions to give opportunities to a lot of newcomers, because the only way that people can hone their skills to the point that they become very commercially viable, or is through being given opportunities to be exposed to in an enterprise setup. So I think those are some of the things I'd highlight, and I think we need a lot of concerted effort around addressing some of this. They are not easy aspects to deal with, but I think they are doable, and I think it's time to take that action. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Aaron. So just before we wrap up, so Dr. Taylor wanted to just share a quick story regarding what we've covered so far. So Doctor, over to you.
Yes, I'll try and keep it very short. So I just want to give the example. I think 2 years ago, a researcher from the UK contacted me through LinkedIn. So he saw my profile on LinkedIn and contacted me. And he had a particular problem. He was developing a low-cost diagnosis tool for cancerous cells. This is for children, for leukemia. And he had a setup that involved a laptop, a camera connected to the microscope, and then a MATLAB package on top that was doing some of the image processing. Now, the challenge is there are few specialists in leukemia in Malawi. There's a brain drain, as we all know, of people who are specialists. So the idea was that the images are collected in Malawi. They are sent via the internet to a lab. I think in this case it was Newcastle University, and they will be diagnosed there. They will be analyzed there, and then the information will be sent back. At the same time, a data set will be built with all these images taken over time, so that an AI capacity will be built on top of that to do some pre-image classification, let's say. Now, this particular researcher, in the UK, has struggled to get this project off the ground. So Whitman was in a hospital, but there were issues in setting it up. So he couldn't, you see. So he was a small kind of research project that he had. So he asked me, is there a way in which a student can go set this equipment up and we can start having the images being sent? Now, the reason I'm saying this story is because you see, sometimes if you are, sometimes an issue of communication. There are needs that are on the ground, and there are also desires to do a project like this from the outside, but somewhere in the middle, the communication doesn't work. So there are skills on the ground that are needed. So for example, there were students, so my answer to him, yes, you know, students are here, they can do that, they can set up the equipment, they can learn at the same time. Then when you come from the hospital, they are busy people, you see, they have patients, they don't have the time to sit next to a computer that might be more intensive to use. So the example I want to give to you is sometimes you have to have enablers. I don't know, people who understand what's happening on the ground, and they know that maybe there's a scope for other people to come in to do some of the things they don't have time for. And, you know, when you look at some countries like India, who has a powerful outsourcing industry in tech, and I think also Ghana, Kenya is coming from behind. Is there no possibility that, you know, we have this capacity on the ground, people can do all these things, and you know, but somewhere, I don't know where, there are obstacles, and starting small could be an answer. You know, why? Somebody was asking the question, you know, how can we have a fast growth in AI? Do we need a fast growth in AI? I don't know. So what kind of growth do we need? And also what kind of technologies are needed? Because sometimes you might want to do too much. And by wanting to do too much, you are not actually achieving, because you are leaving, you know, the leapfrogging aspect. How much can you leapfrog? You know, you can leave various areas uncovered, and then you're just playing a catch-up game. You're coming back on yourself to try to improve those things. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. So that's really true. It really leaves us reflecting to say, like, what I mean, our growth, our development is up to us. So how do we then? What is my personal input into driving my own growth? And I think that also sums up what we've tackled so far in the panel discussion. So from the key areas, or just summarizing what we've covered in our panel discussion, we've seen that actually we have frameworks in place. They might not be the very best that you might maybe hope for, but then we have efforts from our policymakers in helping us have a roadmap in terms of how we could actually innovate and digitize. And we also have platforms that can also help us grow, especially that we're living in a digital world. So we need to think beyond just Zambia and look at and leverage off various innovations that are, various platforms that are accessible to us through the digital means that we have, because we're looking at a digital future where Zambia should be up there on the map. Thank you very much, Francis, for your time. Thank you very much, Aaron, as well, for your time and for sharing your insights that have left us reflecting on so many areas that we can then consider going forward.